Good morning. So, Dewey, it's been a minute, my friend.
I know. I've been traveling.
I know you've been super busy, which is great. Out there doing the Lord's work, right? Doing
Yep, camp
somebody's work. Yep.
messing with just did an initiation with Connor. And then in early this afternoon I'm taking my horse and going up and rounding up about 100 cows up in the high country.
100 cows.
Yep.
So now, the last time that we talked about you going to rustle cows, you got rained out. So, what are the chances of getting rained out today?
Very low.
Oh, good. Oh, well, then I require video before I go to sleep tonight.
Okay. We'll do
You,
that.
the only
Oh,
human I've ever known who got this close to rustling cows. This is not something that happens in Montecito, California.
and it doesn't happen in your backyard in Santa Barbara there, my man Mark.
No, the closest we get is the Royals playing polo at the polo field about a quarter mile from here.
That's intense. I'd rather go wrestle cows.
No, you got to wrestle royalty. Come on, let's. So, sir, I've been thinking about this show for a while, thinking about what and Ask Me Anything is about, what the intent of it is, and I see we've got a few folks on. Not everybody has their camera on. I don't think it looks like, but just welcome to everyone. And so, why don't we'll just get started. If you've got a question, raise your hand and we'll take it, because that's what it's all about. You get to hear from us on Saturdays, so we want to hear from you. And there's no bashfulness allowed. I could be quiet for the whole hour and just wait.
So in a classroom, if someone doesn't speak up, I pick them after about a minute. So,
Oh, do you? Okay, well, there's that.
so what would be helpful to you this morning, gents?
Let's see. We've got Michael, Luke, Jesse, Dwayne, and Perrin. A few people not on camera. So you could pick on the people not on camera just for fun, Dewey. So I will, I'll kick us off, and maybe we'll just doing a cold start doesn't work as well. I've had a chance to work with, our Master's Circle program that we run here at Storytelling School. We're in the period right now where people come out and spend a half a day with us, and we work on what's the near future look like for them. And I have to tell you, it is that my absolute funnest thing I get to do, and we're onboarding a bunch of people. So each Thursday for the next several weeks, we've got someone here. We had a guy come up on by train on Wednesday, dinner with him, and then all in most of the day on Thursday. And it's really interesting when you ask someone what they're building. Just ask yourself, what are you building? That's a pretty simple question, and one that is, in my recent experience, pretty hard for people to answer succinctly in a sentence. What are you building? Why are you building it? How are you going to do it? And that happened again this week. And we kind of start there, like, like I don't know what I'm building. Well, you do know what you're building. You just haven't been asked that question. And the reason we like this building statement is when you meet new people, when they say, what do you do? I'm building, boom, 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 boom. So Dewey, what are you building? You knew this was coming. I gave you like sentence
I am changing what I'm doing here. I'm doing two things. One is, and actually this may lead to a question that I would ask. I'm building a process where I teach therapists how to be therapists out of the box, and also therapists working with men, which would lead me to a question about men in therapy. I'm also building in all honesty, a process where I'm moving toward retirement.
Right.
And so, and over this last couple of weeks, and especially on Kimberly and I went camping for a week, and I think I came up with a fairly creative idea of what I'm going to be doing.
Hmm.
But I do out of this, I do have a question for the men here. And I just got a written note that Jesse's driving. Jesse's actually on his way to my house because at 9 I'm doing a men's group up here for the morning. First of all, how many of you have been in therapy of some sort?
Hmm.
Whether you have been or are in it now, how many of you been? I know that Jesse's driving, Michael. So I have 3 of the men with hands up. I can't see Michael. I have a question for you. What was that therapy like for you? Was it good? What was good about it? What was missing about it? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this is because in March, I'm going to teach a course to therapists and coaches on working with men. And the feedback I keep getting at initiations, both at Traver and Connors, is that men go into therapy and they don't get met. So what's it been like for you? And then let's talk about that some.
Let me start while we wait for someone. I had not done that. And then about 18 years ago, we hit a rough patch, and someone said, "Hey, there's a guy to talk to." And we went in and talked to him. And I think what worked for me is he really went out of his way to connect to each one of us before we talked about anything, which I really appreciated. And we found out, he's a couple years older than me, which I appreciated. He surfer, lived here in Santa Barbara, one of the top guys in the country. So his cred was high for me. But he was a third dan black belt, and that made a huge difference for me. And he was for us. His approach was to listen, and you knew he recognized what was going on pretty quickly. Didn't let you, I got it, or something like that. But he gave us a tool that we could use when that thing happened later, that we could pull that tool out. And I can think of a dozen tools off the top of my head right now that over the years we've kept going to see him just to keep the knife sharp, so to speak. And I liked that tool approach that worked for both of us, knowing we could reach in, grab something. So I think it was his going out of his way to build rapport right off the bat. Let's see if someone else wants to chime in. Yeah, Luke.
Hey, Duey, Mark, this is Michael. Morning.
Good morning, Michael.
So, I've had a couple different experiences in therapy. First, I had 2 or 3 therapists that, when I was married, we did couples counseling, and I think that kind of ranged across the board in terms of, I felt, two of those therapists were, you know, a little bit more feminine inclined, meaning, I didn't feel like I was necessarily being heard all the time. Um, the last 3 years I've been in therapy. Um, and honestly, it's kind of been up and down for me. There are times where I really do feel like, and the therapist I've been seeing is female. Um, I really feel like, at times I am being met. She understands exactly where I'm coming from. She, puts it into a male lens, which definitely helps. And other times I do feel disconnected uh, uh, from them, and it's just I really feel like it's the effort that she puts in Duey. I think you kind of hit it spot on in terms of, or Mark, you said it, is when they really take the time to understand. um and I that's really been my experience.
Cool. So, follow-up question, then I'd also like to hear from other men. When you feel missed, is there a particular thing that you're talking about or a particular place that she misses you?
Hmm. It's been a while since I've been, so I can't, and I've not had a female therapist, so I don't get to answer
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah, I was talking to Michael.
Hmm.
I have to unmute myself here. um I if I could put it into a theme, I think it's about um desire. And I don't simply mean, like a sexual desire or anything else like that, but just how do I fulfill, or how do I guide myself, or how do I get guided to understanding what I want, um and getting clarity for myself, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
I think that's probably the times where I don't feel like I'm being met.
Okay. That's really helpful. And actually, I'm willing to come back around and even talk to you a little bit more about that, Michael, if you want. What? How about other men that have been in therapy?
Yeah, I could chime in a little bit. Um, I've had a couple therapists. I had one female, one male, and um, I, I never really felt met by either one of them. I also know um, um, I had a hard time um, uh, saying the right things on my end of it too, like to be completely open and upfront. Because one thing I learned through talking with both of them, and after the fact, of course, is um, the level of rationalization and avoidance that that the different layers that I have. Um, but Yeah, because the one time, like with the female, I would therapist I talked about with having trouble, um, like I didn't. The way I said it to her is I didn't feel like I could put out my will out into the world. I couldn't do my thing, my type of thing, and then later on when I brought my wife in, because the therapist thought, hey, this would be a good time for you guys to connect. She kind of put her in a corner and said that, is it, are you like making her sound like she's doing that to me almost? But this is like, I had trouble explaining that this was an entire life type of thing for me. So, um, and
It
then
wasn't about your wife.
go ahead.
That it wasn't about your wife.
No, my wife is actually the one that's probably the most upfront and honest with me when, um, and she's the one that tells me, "Hey, I want you to take action. It helps me feel more open and more relaxed in myself in the feminine because, um, because she's had to take on, I guess you could say, more that the action role, I guess, more of the like, I'll handle this, I'll handle this, I'll handle this, because of my own lack of seeing it, picking up on it, doing that stuff um, myself. Um, and and if that helps explain it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Would it be a fair thing? I'm on my iPad. I couldn't get this pulled up on my computer today, so I don't have a mic.
Yeah.
So let me know if y'all can't hear me. Would it be a fair thing to say that part of what you were working on is how to be potent and in the world?
Yeah, 100%. Like some of the, I would say the biggest thing, I think I was in a place of very much of disconnect with everything, like, which is kind of goes back to Mark's question of what are we building, and that's connection is just to everything, even the crafts that I do, the experiencing nature. I was disconnected from all that. So now when I feel feelings, they're intense, and sometimes they come on without any um any warning. So
So it would also entail of building a level of awareness that you don't have at this point.
correct. Yeah.
Got it. Anybody else? And I'm actually happy to come back and process a little bit with either of you if you want, or if anyone has questions about those things.
I have a question for you, Dewey. As it relates to therapy, is what's the how do you figure out how long you need to go, or when it's time to leave, or when it's time to go back?
Well, it oftentimes depends on the therapist versus you. I think there's two things. So actually, let's hang on to that for a minute. Well, no, never mind. I'll come back to that. I think it's time to leave if you've done 3 sessions, and whether they're your first 3 sessions or 3 sessions in a, down the road where you don't feel like anything is happening.
Hmm.
That's one time. Or if in general you don't feel like anything is happening.
Dewey, what do you mean by nothing's happening?
Now that you're talking about the same thing, that there's not a shift from the beginning of the session to the end of the session, that you don't walk away with something that you're going to go work on,
Mm.
those kind of things. um, the other time is when you truly feel like you finished up whatever you came in to do. Most of the time, though, when people come in to me as a client, they present one thing, but it isn't. It's what to the best of their ability, what they think they need to work on.
Right. Right.
But as soon as you open up a few things, then people go, "Oh shit, I need this."
Dewey, it feels like there's this difference between, am I going, like in this example, to solve a specific problem? So I think of it as like I'm going to the ER. Like, I hope it doesn't get so bad where I've got to go to the ER therapeutically, right? That someone's got to help, as opposed to going in for regular checkups or kind of having an ongoing maintenance kind of thing. Do you so you see those are the two ends of that, ER or regular maintenance. Do you have a point of view on that?
Well, most of the time, people don't come in until they're ready to go to the ER. Well,
That's kind of my point.
But let me talk about this a little bit, because if somebody comes in and they have to go to the ER, so to speak, if the therapist knows what they're doing, what they have to do is sort of go back and figure out how you got where you got.
Right. Yep.
And many people will come in and, go sort of from an emergency place, and they want a solution, which is, it doesn't work that way. It's like if somebody has a heart issue and they go into the ER, maybe the ER doc can keep them from having a heart attack and dying, but their heart they didn't get a heart condition in the last day and a half. They got a heart condition that built up over time.
Our analogy is holding really well so far. Keep going.
All righty. So, but the bottom line is that one of my premise is that many therapists come in and they do a fairly good job at holding space and maybe understanding what's happening, but they don't do a good, and maybe even analyzing what is happening, but they don't do a good job at helping to shift what's happening. And does that make sense to y'all? Anybody have that experience? You're about to read. Oh,
Yeah. Everybody.
I think two things happen, especially with men, is that most therapy schools have about 90% women students and 90% women teachers. So I don't think it's any fault of the students or the teachers, but there's clearly a skew toward the feminine in what everybody's learning. So people come out and it's sort of like, I'll use one of Alison Armstrong's phrases, that people come out and treat men like hairy women. And instead of going, okay, there's a difference here. The job of a therapist, and there are many women who are nervous about upsetting men. So unless a woman has worked through that and somebody is in therapy, a woman is working with a man, many times they're afraid to upset him. Has anyone had that experience in therapy?
Looks like not. Looks like not.
A therapist's job is to disturb your homeostasis. A therapist's job is not to just understand what you're doing, or to even analyze what you're doing necessarily. Because understanding and analyzation it's the beginning of a shift, but it's not what creates a shift.
Keep going on that. I want to pull on this thread a bit.
Okay. And what creates a shift is having a habit or whatever we do, whatever we create as a homeostatic process, is to have that shifted, have that disturbed. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you talk about understanding and analysis, it's to the point of I came in and presented with one thing in back to our emergency room deal. I presented with that, and so they have to understand and analyze and figure it out. But then once they've done that, then their job really starts, because they know where as you said, homeostasis, where I need to disrupt the pattern, right? Because that's what you're trying to do. You need to break the pattern. Is that correct? I want to make sure I got that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so then are you suggesting possibly that they're not being trained on how to disrupt, because that sounds challenging to come in and I'm gonna fuck with your stuff right now.
Fuck with these guys' stuff and their home.
But I mean, is that so you're suggesting that's really the job?
Yeah, that's our job, is for lack of better words, and I don't mean it in this way, but our job is to fuck with people.
Right.
In a way that helps them grow.
Right. So
Luke,
is it also
Luke, wait a minute.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Luke, what did you say, Luke? I just saw it flash up.
Yeah, just a question. So this would be them essentially creating a like a polarization or a conflict to put us in a state to disrupt our homeostasis that we're currently in, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I wouldn't go so far as to say a polarization or a conflict. There's more of an art to it than that. It's like moving the needle some, but not blowing you out of the water.
So Dewey, it feels like, and
hang on a second. So Luke, when you were saying that, for instance, when you were saying that you don't know what you're feeling, you don't, and you hold them in, and then they all come up, and you sort of get blown. Is that accurate?
Maybe I might have misheard you, but like yeah, like I didn't start, like, for me, I was so like, I used the word dissociate. I don't know if that's correct, but like I couldn't remember, and it took me getting in really upsetting situations that threw basically every system I had in my life out of the water, to start remembering things that happened, and and when I started doing my own work, because I knew where I was, it was the first time I was feeling feelings again was with simple things like washing my hands or being outside, like my senses were like, oh, well, this actually feels good, or this is really nice. And I would actually break down because I noticed the feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
What threw you into that, to being able to do that?
Um, a couple things. Uh, I would say my starting to recognize it was when I remembered um, my wife and I losing our first uh, when she was in second trimester, and that happened actually like a couple of years before like I remembered it. But I would say that's one of the things. And then we started having trouble in relationship because of me disconnecting more and more with things and doing like being in reality less and less. And then also like recently it's happened because I've gained confidence and I've made moves and I took risks and basically lost everything we had. But in the in that process of recognizing that over the last 2 years, our relationship has grown a lot stronger because I've taken much more responsibility for things. Um, anyway, I digressed a little bit, but
Oh, that's okay. So think about, and then I want to go back to what you were saying, Mark. Think about, Luke, think about what it is. And if you run a session, we go way deeper, but when you dissociate or when you go away, you don't let things yourself feel things. And you don't have to answer this right now. In fact, it's probably what I'll just put it out. When you don't feel, what are you protecting?
uh, I'm protecting essentially myself. I've shared this with a couple other uh, guys in the nation before too, but basically, there's instances like growing up where I was made to feel responsible for, I guess, without giving you all the stories, but other people's feelings, other people's uh, hurts, their pain. And I basically got to the point where um, I I didn't want to say anything because I thought I would hurt somebody or upset somebody. I didn't want to do my own things. I didn't want to show my own unique self. So I just learned to follow directions. So
So what are you protecting?
I guess maybe I uh, that I don't know. Um, I feel like it, and this is a feeling, so I don't know if that's what I'm protecting or not. But it's uh, there's always that feeling that if I'm going to do something, it's going to end up hurting other people. Like when I took a job that looked good and thought it was going to help everybody, and I ended up losing everything we had in the process. And some of that might be me making it a self-fulfilling prophecy in my own subconscious, or um, so protecting, I don't know. I just I know what I don't know what I'm protecting to do that. I suppose I feel like I might get that hurt again, which keeps coming up every time I finally get enough courage to do something about it. So
Where you feel hurt or someone else feels hurt?
both. I've in the past I took on exercise to make myself feel better, and I worked out so hard that I basically pulled nutrients from my body, and I had my own uh, like bone structure was breaking down and stuff. Like they saw like holes throughout my um, all my bones and everything like that. But I was working out like twice a day, and I was for several hours at a time, and thinking it was something productive, and it was making me feel good because in my strength levels were going up and stuff like that. But then when I started having problems because it got to a point where my body couldn't maintain it anymore, um, I was hurting myself, and then um, and like in the past, like w- I I remember, um, I mean, a lot of these times is I ended up hurting myself more in the process than the initial thing probably did. So, but like in order to talk to my parents about anxiety, I like, and that was an action on my part. I got enough courage to do it, and they locked me outside for the night. And I went to crawl in the back of the truck to sleep until I woke up shivering, and I snuck in the wood chute hole because I remembered there was a way in through our wood chute in the basement. So it just feels like sometimes those actions, there's always that feeling like, man, it's I need it to go right, but like logically I can think through it. It's just the feeling, and I don't know what's happened subconsciously to overcome it. So I gave you a lot there. Sorry.
That's okay. Let me bring it in a little bit.
Yeah.
So in both cases, both from yourself and from your parents, you are trying to protect yourself from being harmed.
Yeah.
So, and if we were working, that's what I would work with you on. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And many times what happens is that when you worked out to the point to where you hurt yourself, we learn the homeostasis is that you're going to get hurt. When you work out so to the point to where you hurt yourself, what you're doing is fulfilling that process that your life is about you being hurt. If someone else won't do it, you'll do it for yourself, to yourself.
Right.
So
Dewey, let's move to Pran. He had his hand up. Luke, thanks for being so vulnerable there, bud.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're
Oh,
good.
okay. Okay.
I wouldn't miss that accent anywhere.
Okay. I'm surprised you're not dressed up like the photo today, Mark. But I was going to give some observations I've had from being some therapists and some counselors.
yeah, that'd be great.
I found some of them haven't wanted to delve below the surface.
Yep.
That they haven't actually had the intuition to go down further. Whether it's just me or whether it was a therapist or a combination. Because I know before I started the Nation, I was very much, these are the facts, these are not my feelings.
Mhm.
And I think some of the therapists also, or one of the therapists was very much driven by one methodology rather than what I needed, I think.
Say a little bit more about that piece.
Well, I went to one counsellor that my wife had been to, and she'd given me the card at one point. So I went to see that lady, and she was driven by, is it Getting the Love You Want by Harville? Whatever.
Hendrick?
Yes. And she was just driven by that rather than treating me as an individual. And I think I went to her soon, or just about the time that I joined the nice guy, and realized there was a lot of work I needed to do on myself before going back as a couple,
Mm-hmm.
because there was a lot of stuff I felt I needed to look at myself individually rather than doing it with somebody else.
Be able to find a person to do that with?
Yes, so the guy that runs the men's group, who is a psychotherapist, I've had 1 or 2 sessions with him, and he's been able to get fairly deep with me on those
Michael,
sessions.
you mean?
Sorry?
Michael?
No, it's actually another Mike, but it's not Michael.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's somebody local.
Got it. Okay.
He
Got
he he hosts a men's workshop lunchtime every Saturdays in his office.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I just happened to find it at the beginning of the year. It was bi-weekly and now every week. So,
Very nice.
and there's been 3 occasions where I've actually had a counseling session because I was the only person there. So
Okay.
there's a bonus in turning up.
World belongs to those who show up.
Yes.
Yep, exactly.
And then I had another instance way back where I visited a therapist. I think he was a psychologist. And after the third session, he said, "I don't know why you're here. There's nothing wrong with you."
What was that like, hearing that?
Well, it was very it was very important to me, but it also, I said, well, I'm here for my sanity, and I'm here because I need to get the numbers up for my wife, because she's had so much counseling that she felt I needed so many sessions before we did anything together. And he'd actually been involved with my wife, so he knew the whole situation.
So, did you feel like when he said that to you, did you feel like he got you, or did you feel like he missed you?
I think he got me to a certain extent, but he hadn't actually delved down deeper.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was because he'd based it on all the interactions he had with my wife over the years
Okay.
and understood the situation. And I think at one point my wife gave me a list of things to discuss with him.
That go.
He looked at it and laughed at it.
Oh, good.
Yes. And then I've also had some feedback from my wife, who's gone to a number of different therapists, and several times she's come back and talked about a diagnosis of her ex-husband, not her. And as soon as they get fairly close to close to her, she seems to switch therapists.
Yep.
But I feel that the guy that I see now is very much, he doesn't allow me to deflect when we talk about me. And we actually go down into the feelings and where in the body things come from.
Mm-hmm. Is that the person that's been the most helpful?
He has been, yes.
That's great.
And he's also a fan of you as well, Duey.
Oh, well, there you go. That's why.
And I've actually shared a lot of the stuff. I actually let him borrow Traver's book at one point
Oh, very cool.
because he felt a bit nervous about the stuff I was doing in the nation.
Oh, you felt nervous about it?
Yeah, a bit insecure.
Mm.
Oh,
So I've actually shared with him the reading list we've had.
that's cool. Has that helped him?
It's helped him, and I've also shared some of the stuff that Traver's done online as well, some of the YouTube stuff.
Very cool.
So Dewey, thanks, Perrin. Dewey,
Thank
a couple of things come to mind. One is, it sounds like you were talking, if the therapist's job is to fuck things up, to disrupt things, that Perrin's wife, when the therapist was ready to do their job and fuck success, oh no, I'm good, thank you, I'll go to find someone else. Just guessing. But that being said, this idea of identifying
Keep talking. I can hear you.
identifying that thing, that thread you need to pull on it at a given moment. There's granted, there's a lot of threads in the fabric, but pulling on that, I think the thing that helped me the most was when our guy accurately identified what thread needed to be pulled that particular time
Exactly.
and pulled it, and it, you go through this, that ouch, that hurts, or whatever that feeling was at the time. But the thing that really helped me, and this is the question I have, is because you're only in there for an hour. If it's every week or every month or whatever, you're only on the mat, so to speak, for an hour. And it was his ability to teach me or us how to recognize that, the causal behavior, so that we could see it when we were off the mat. Oh, I'm doing that, or that thing is starting to happen, and I could use the tool right then. And I think it was a closed loop for us. It was like, hey, I'm going to go identify the thing, and then I'm going to teach you how to identify it. And when you see it, either one of you sees it, you agree, you're going to call it out. Hey, I see that. And then, okay, great, we can work on it. And then those periods got shorter and shorter until that wasn't an issue anymore. It
Right.
is, that was my experience. Is that how you ideally want it to work?
Yeah. I mean, and it actually depends on what people come in for. There are some situations where people come in and they're pretty solid, and most of the work is problem solving, which is sort of what you just described.
Right.
Many people come in and it's not, they think it's about problem solving, but what it's really about is helping somebody build their life in a way that is helpful to them.
So I love being able to hear what you say and then repeat it to make sure I got it right. So it's kind of, I'm going to go back to our emergency room, which is a surface level thing that can be easily dispatched, versus something that's systemic, that's going to require much deeper, possibly literally life altering behavior. So you stay out of the ER.
Mm-hmm. Part of what happens, and this is part of what I think, Perrin, when you were talking about this, as part of what you were talking about, is we can go to the ER with a certain symptom. And under certain circumstances, like when Kimberly and I were camping, actually before we went, I did a thing to my wrist while we were camping. I did it again and went into the ER. Well, it turns out I broke a small bone down here. And it's like, okay, I had a brace and I'm mostly over that. That's a different thing than somebody who has more of a systemic issue. And in the systemic issue, most of the time what happens is that people go in and think that if they fix the symptom, the systemic issue will get fixed. And that's not the case.
So it's the therapist who correctly identifies that this thing you came in for, while yes, it hurts right now, the root cause is something deeper, and that's really what needs to be addressed. And that's when you know you've found the right person. Or at least the right connection is made, right?
Absolutely. And sort of going all the way back to where you started with, when do you know you're finished? It's when you can begin doing whatever you're doing in therapy, when you can do that yourself and for yourself.
Right.
One of the pieces that I would say is, and this happens more often than not when people come in, is that people will say, I need to heal X, Y, and Z. And many times what I have found is that people come in and it's almost like, in many ways, instead of healing X, Y, and Z, we need to sort of go help somebody rebuild their entire life. And those are two very different things in therapy.
Yeah. So I have a different question now. I want to switch a little bit. That was spurred by what?
About 2 more minutes.
Okay. I want to spurred on what Perrin said, which was where they worked as a couple, but they couldn't work as a couple until they'd done individual work. And my experience was different in that when he was focused right on me, right, having her there while was uncomfortable because I was super vulnerable. I felt, because we have this belief that relationship is a team sport, that her knowing what I was going through and was super helpful. Likewise, if there was a thing for her and going through. So there was one time where I went in over years where I went individually, and I was not. I was like, this doesn't feel right. I want to be here together working on these things, even though we're individual. Do you have a comment on that in our last minute together?
Yeah, actually, I'm really glad you asked that, Mark. Many of you have been in like a men's group or at an initiation. And at initiations, a man will do a piece of work, but everybody gains from it. When I do couples work, I want the other person there. Even if I happen to work with one of the people in a couple individually, I want both of them there. Because if you're in an initiation and you do this incredible work, it's impossible to go home and explain what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
It's impossible. And that same thing happens in individual therapy.
Yeah.
And it's like when somebody experiences what you go through, good, they get it. If somebody gets told what you're going through, it's like you get parts of it, maybe. Does that make sense to you?
No, 1,000%, because it feels like in the one, I'm just recalling a list of things that happen at data, as opposed to it's devoid of emotion, right? Because it's the emotion of being in the moment, which is what we've been talking about. My friend, we've come to the end of
Thank you.
another live. You've got to get off to your busy life. I appreciate it. Love
I
you
have
so much.
on my porch right now.
And guys, thanks for joining with us and bearing your souls. We deeply appreciate it. Love you, man.
All right. Thank
Bye.
you, man. Love
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.